Hello and welcome to this issue of the Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Linemiller, your host. We are excited to have another industry expert to speak to us today, all about seafood, believe it or not. Quick shout out to our sponsor, Farm to Plate. They're a software company really diving into the food system ecosystem. We're excited to welcome Nobu Yamanashi. He is the president of Yama Seafood. Welcome to the podcast, Nobu.
Thanks, Pam.
Yeah, so glad to have you. And you have a great company story, and the industry that you're involved in is really unique. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your company and how you got started?
Sure. My father, Kingo, started the business back in the mid 70s. He was one of the first person to commercialize bluefin tuna that was being caught in Boston area, Gloucester. Where the fishermen, it was more sports fishing, and they were kind of tossing it back in the waters. And I guess, he saw the opportunity where, sushi as a restaurant and industry was starting to take off in New York. And once he found out that it was just kind of being, fished and thrown back in, he was like, well, it's a perfect opportunity. So he's one of the first to buy it from a sports fisherman for like $1 a pound. Now it's 10, 15, 20x what it is, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. But he was the first one to bring it back to New York, essentially like open a van, say to a restaurant, just take your cut. And that's kind of how it all started. I'm assuming now it's, highly against all regulations, but that's kind of how the business started. And, he started off as a small company focusing on tuna, purchasing from, a local Montauk, Boston, Florida. And then he was selling it to the Tsukiji market in Japan in auction. And that's kind of how the business started. But as the restaurant side started taking off in New York, our warehouse at the time in the beginning was in the Gansevoort meatpacking district. Now it's called the Gansevoort building. And, so the restaurant started opening, we started delivering there, and he started focusing more on distribution side than the exporting and, selling just tuna. Yep. So, and then in, I think 1990, we outgrew the space, and we moved to our current facility in Jersey City. We're in Liberty State Park area.
Yeah, nice. And I'm familiar with Jersey, love that area of the United States. For our international listeners, that's in the Northeast and New York, obviously, most people know where that is. The fun part of this story for me is that essentially, you're probably right. It would not be legal to kind of go down on the docks and talk to the sports fishermen and say, hey, can I buy your tuna? But what insight your dad had to just start that way. And then he was able to carve out a profit margin immediately and start, doing that international work too, connecting the two countries. That's really amazing. So today, you're really, tuna is a big part of your operation, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it used to be a much larger portion, but we've been able to kind of diversify our portfolio and bring on, different aspects of the seafood business to not be so heavily reliant on tuna. It's definitely our bread and butter, our core business, or what we take the most pride in. Yeah, I mean, it's still about probably a quarter to a third of our overall business at the moment.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of expertise in that area. And one of the other things is your sourcing too with the market in Japan. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you have a really unique relationship there that not a lot of seafood companies do.
Yeah, I mean, culturally speaking, it's not a very easy market to source from. You need to either know somebody, speak the language, know the culture, or be part of the culture. You can't really be an outsider trying to, wave around a blank check and say, hey, I'm willing to purchase. It hasn't. I mean, it may work that way in the future, but, it's a country that is they're not diverse. They don't really speak English. So any kind of outside challenges, outside factors, they don't really want to deal with. They're all about relationship and referrals and trust. So any outsider walking in, it's just very difficult to kind of penetrate into that market. So yeah, we source directly from Hokkaido, which is the northern tip of Japan. We source fish from Kyushu, which is on the southern end. And then obviously we have a very strong relationship in the new Toyosu market, which is the former Tsukiji market, where we source from several vendors. And yeah, I mean, we import 4 days a week from Japan to JFK. And yeah, I mean, we're as much of a logistics company as a seafood company. So, because we have hundreds of shipments every week from all over the world, from tuna to salmon to Japan to, it doesn't matter. So it's just consolidating all of that, managing that, picking up at Newark Airport, JFK, trucking companies going to pick up at the Fulton Fish Market. There's different areas to pick up at. It's just coordination of all of that at pretty much at an ungodly hour, middle of the night where no one's awake. That's the biggest challenge. And to make sure that if it doesn't go according to plan, to be able to communicate that with our clients, saying, hey, there's a delay. Obviously airlines do get delayed, like shipments get delayed, shipments get lost when you have mass volume of things moving outside of what only we deal with. So, shipment gets lost sometimes, shipment gets delayed all the time, gets held at custom. So it's about being able to, pivot and adjust whenever those things happen, whether it doesn't make any business sense to lose a ton of money to send out somebody to go, or, making a second run to the airport to go do an afternoon delivery. These are things that if, we feel that it's our responsibility to be able to do whatever is necessary to cater to our clients.
Yeah, and that is something I think our listeners might not realize about your business is you're dealing with fresh fish and the whole logistical situation with importing it, exporting it, getting your deliveries made. And one of the things that I really noticed in looking at your website, watching your video, you've got some great information out there for any of our listeners that want to take a look at that. But you are really, really tied closely with your clients. You know them, your chefs, your restaurants, what kind of cuts they like. I mean, the level of detail as we're watching, even when your fish cutters, I don't know what the official term is, but there's a lot of work that goes into preparing the fish for your client. And those people are experts in what they do, and they know how your client wants it cut. Can you share a little bit about how you achieve that? I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, it's a very nuanced business. It's not like a system can take over or robots can take over and do everything properly, because fish itself is very subjective. The chefs itself has their own understanding of what's good and what's bad. Doesn't mean you could talk to 5 different chefs and they have 5 different opinions about the same exact tuna that I delivered to them. And one could say it's the best thing they've ever seen. The next person could say it's the worst thing they've ever seen. So it's understanding their understanding of what good and bad is. So that requires some trial and error, communication. Quite frankly, it's more of a partnership than a transactional relationship of I sell you X, you pay me Y, and, I deliver it to you and that's it. It's more like, at the end of the day, these are wild species, or, they're not made in a factory, right? Some are farmed, of course, but even if it's farmed, it's not every single fish is going to be exact same fat content, exact same color, exact same freshness. Water temperatures differ, the way that was killed differs, the way, it transported differs, packed is different. So every single tuna, for example, is different. There's no one tuna that's the same. It's kind of like, I guess, snowflakes, right? And then to be able to then say, okay, well, the French chef wants this color, the Japanese chef wants this color, the Italian chef wants this color, but this guy doesn't like the tail side, this guy wants the center cut, this guy wants, he's accepting of a little bit overweight. This guy's definitely, very hard no on being over, because literally a 500-pound bluefin tuna, a centimeter can make a difference of 5 pounds. If you ordered 15 pounds and you cut it, you make and it's all by eye. You gauge it by eye. Say, okay, it's going to be this much. You cut it and it ends up being 22 pounds. In the grand scheme of things, it may not seem like a big deal, but for some, it may be a huge deal. It's like, hey, I ordered 15 pounds and you're sending me 50% more. What is that? I can't do that. Right. So to be able to then understand if something were to happen, because we're humans, to be able to make that judgment call and say, okay, this guy can still accept it. We obviously notify the customer, say, hey, we're sorry. We overcut yours a little bit. It's still middle of the week, so can you use it, and just kind of we'll send less the next order. Or we say, okay, well, we can't. So we can't, this customer's definitely not going to accept it. So we have to send it to somebody else or send a different cut or trim it again. So these are things that we have to, know based on the customer preferences, habits, personalities, to be able to make that judgment call. So a lot of it is knowledge and expertise driven on people. It's just people at the end of the day. So.
It is just people at the end of the day, but there is a lot of expertise and knowledge required, and also the skill in dealing with the fish and cutting and preparing and all of that as you watch the video. So that is amazing to me. And the knowledge of the chefs, like I said, just that partnership is really, really unique. Well, you talked about some of the preparation, but you have an operation that, like you talked about, Friday night is your big night, order prep and getting out to restaurants. Can you give us a window into what happens?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's actually Friday morning, Thursday night. Yeah. So, we're not open on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. A lot of other seafood distributors are open on Saturdays, so they don't have the need to be as crazy busy as we are. But on Fridays, we process about a third of our sales that week goes on a Friday. So on a typical Monday through Thursday, like most people would start around 3-4 o'clock in the morning. On a typical Friday, most people start around 2:30 in the morning. Myself, I'm usually there by 3:34 most days, and then Fridays I'm there by 2:30. And it's just packing an extra. If, like today we packed 150 orders, Friday we'll probably pack 300 orders. So, today we had 12 vans that go out. Friday we'll probably have 20 vans that go out. So, I mean, literally it's just 5-6 hours of straight, just being on your feet, packing, trying to move as quickly as possible without making mistakes. And it's just, making sure the invoices get printed, drivers can get out. And then at that point, it's just minimize the mistakes while taking care of quality and, fulfilling the orders as efficiently as possible. But yeah, it's very hectic on a Friday because we're all just, adrenaline's rushing, and, the tuna guys are cutting 4,000 or 5,000 pounds worth of tuna that day. I got guys here since 1 o'clock in the morning, setting up the warehouse, packing orders. And it's just, truck breaks down. Sometimes you have to send somebody out, all the shipments are delayed, and it's just, constantly trying to adjust to the variables and, situations at hand and be able to, fix that problem, because at the end of the day, the customers really don't care why we're late. It's just like, I don't have to explain to them, hey, my truck broke down, so I had to send another driver to go get it figured out. Sorry, we're late. I mean, sure, we do have to make those excuses sometimes, but, we have to always have backups in place to avoid those, as if nothing happened. So we try to do our best.
Yeah, it sounds like you do have to have the backup plan just for every contingency, whether it be the weather or flights or logistics with trucks or traffic. I mean, the area of the country that you're dealing in, especially if you're going to New York or the Bronx or different places that are really congested, that's out of your control, but you've still got to make it to the customer. But one of the things you brought up is, you're not open on the weekends, and, your employees are all hands on deck. You have a really great culture there at Yama Seafood, and that's intentional based on what your dad set up as far as your values. And I think it's unique with companies, and maybe it's a result of the family-owned business and handing that down. But can you share a little bit about the culture there at Yama Seafood and why that's really a differentiator in my mind?
Yeah, I mean, when they started, it was just a bunch of immigrants from all different walks of life, from Japan, China, Korea, Ecuador, Mexico, you name it. It was pretty much everyone but people from here that kind of formed the company.
The opposite of DEI. Okay.
The few things that my father really cared about were not about your, speed or your intelligence or your skill, or, he cares more about, your respect towards one another's, responsibility towards the job, being consistent on time, early, don't call out, and your, greetings. For us, respect comes to greetings. We're only as good as, the customers that we work with. So when we take that for granted and don't forget that, hey, they're our customers. So, we always have to have that mindset. We're there because of that. And so every morning people walk in, we expect everyone to say good morning. Because you never know nowadays, especially with our direct to consumer, people come and pick up, chefs come and visit us. It's like at any given moment, people can walk in. That's not our staff. And if they walk in and no one says anything, that is not the environment I want. I want them to feel like, wow, Yama Seafood is different. I come in and they all said hello to me, and, they went out of their way to greet me. it has to be an impact rather than, there's so many other companies you walk in as a visitor or guest, and everyone's just looking down, ignoring you, don't even acknowledge your presence, and you're standing around like clueless. We don't want that to happen. So every single person that comes through the door, ourselves, myself included, we walk through the warehouse when we come in, we say good morning, we acknowledge everybody. Some people just some people walk in and scream at the top of their lungs. It's kind of funny, but it's just, making sure everyone knows you're here, make eye contact, just show the respect. And then that's contagious. And everybody does it. I mean, literally when you're going through training and onboarding, it's like first thing you heard, a few things you hear is don't be late, say your good mornings, and, don't cheat, don't lie, don't steal. I mean, very basic things, right? For us, it's about, we're not a office-based company where if you call out today, someone can, you can answer your email tomorrow. No, it's like if a driver calls out, somebody else has to go out to deliver, so it's just about having the understanding that, hey, always the next man up mentality, but at the same time, it's just take your work seriously and responsibly. And if you do that, then everyone's going to have that same attitude.
Right.
So that's what we have. I mean, a good chunk, probably about a third of our staff don't even speak English, but quite frankly, many of them are some of our best workers, right? They don't never complain. They never call out. They work their hardest, right? And they figure out a way to communicate, and they're consistent, right? What if they don't know, we try to figure out a way to communicate with them. And then if we have people that can translate to them too, if we need like in-depth conversation, but we don't really hire based on, oh, you must speak English, or you must speak this, or you must know this, you must have graduated from this college. I mean, no, for us, it's as long as you have the willingness to work, you're consistent, you show up to work on time, you don't have excuses as to why you're not here, day in and day out. I mean, there's a place for you here,
Yeah.
So that's the most thing that we care about.
Yeah, and that is such a great culture to have, honestly. And I'm sure that's why you've had employees for as long as you've had. Many people, it's not an easy business to be in. It's very intense, like you were saying, but you've had employees who have been with you 10, 20, 30, I don't know how long.
Yeah, I mean, every 20 years is a milestone at our company. So when you hit 20 years, it was always a company gift to give you a Rolex. That's kind of like a trophy to say thank you. And we have more than a dozen people with that. And maybe there should be one with maybe two coming up soon, not that I'll buy a second one for them, but we have many people with very long tenures, 10, 20, 30 years. It's pretty normal for us here. And like you said, it's an industry itself is very difficult because you got to be up when everyone's sleeping. I mean, I live in Jersey City, so when on Thursday night, Friday morning, when I go to work, people are still coming out of the bars.
Yeah.
Right? Like when I leave to go in my car at like 1:45, 2 a.m. to head to work, I mean, the bars are still open. Mm-hmm. People are stumbling around. People haven't even slept yet. Right. Meanwhile, there's me in a jumpsuit that's driving to work at the backpack. Right. It's like it's completely different. So in my 20s, I just couldn't fathom like why. I went to college. I have other opportunities. Why would I do this? And at the time, it didn't make any sense. But as I matured and worked the corporate world and did other things, and then came to the realization. I mean, this was never a thing where my father was always like, don't do this. You speak English, you're college educated, you can speak Japanese, you have all the opportunities in the world. Why would you want to change your life upside down, impact, everybody involved with you, like your spouse, kids, whatever, where you're going to be in bed when they're trying to, like hang out with you. And weekends too. Like, it's not like just because it's a weekend, you don't have work the next day, it doesn't mean you can stay up till midnight, just watch TV. It's like, no, like, Saturday nights, like 9 o'clock, lights out, like unless it's like a special occasion, a wedding, whatever, it's just not going to happen because my body's so used to sleeping at 7, 8 o'clock most days.
Yeah. Well, why did you come back?
I mean, it was a combination of wanting to, it was kind of like at the point in time, my father was looking to deciding between selling the business or doing something with it. He was on his track to retirement, and he never really said it, but he had a hard time letting go because it's something that he had poured his life and soul into it, right? And he also was afraid that if he sold it, then it would be, I mean, this is my assumption, but it would change the livelihood of his staff that's been with them through everything from start to finish, and he's not the easiest person to work for. He's very hardcore. So, it's just, if you sold to a big conglomerate in Japan where, he's had several offers in the past, it would change their income, benefits, livelihood. And, quite frankly, they might even, change their whole operation, and people may lose their jobs. And that's the thing that he would never want to do. He never cared about how much money he made. He always cared about, his biggest thing was he wanted people to be prideful of Yama Seafood, to say, hey, you know what, I may not be a millionaire, but because I work for Yama Seafood, I was able to provide for my family and live a comfortable life, and be proud of where you work. It's just giving the opportunity and to be proud of who you are and where you work, because quite frankly, you spend a good chunk of your life at work, right? So you got to be able to like where you work. Otherwise, it's just kind of miserable. So,
go ahead.
And then it was just, at that point, I was in my late 20s. I was unhappy. I was, it's kind of ready to move on from my current job. And I flew to Japan at the time when he was there. And I was like, hey, I think I want to join the company, and moved back to New Jersey because I was in LA at the time. And then, he's like, all right, well, the phone number, the email address, go give him a call, schedule an interview. If they're going to interview you, good luck type deal. So that was kind of how the conversation went. So I called, or I emailed one of the directors, scheduled an interview, and came in and, moved back from LA. And, like a month later, I started working. And yeah, I mean, it was just, nepotism is not really, it's kind of not frowned upon, but it's just, for him, he knew that if he were to hand it down, it would be way more difficult to transition, right? It's just, he was all about just earn it, otherwise how are you going to lead if they don't respect you? Just because you have the last name, doesn't mean you can run the business or get the respect from the people that has known you since you were in your diapers. So that's the challenge as well, right? So they've known me since I was, yay high and drawing on the walls, and they would come in on Monday. It's like, oh, there he is, just drawing on the walls again. To 30 years later, joining the company. And it's got its challenges culturally speaking, where it's all about seniority, and age is a big thing in the Japanese culture. To someone that's essentially my parents' age, for me to manage them, it takes a level of, you have to be respected and you have to earn that respect. Mm-hmm. So I try to do that day in and day out, and sometimes I struggle with that as well in terms of did I do enough to deserve it? So.
Well, it seems like you're really focusing on that. And I think it's very funny that your dad made you call separately and interview at the company. But in reality, that is the way that he operates. That's the culture at your company. You've obviously come in, qualified, and worked hard and earned the respect and the position that you have. And so that is really a good leadership lesson for those that are out there listening. I think it's great. But what I see you brought in, because there's some innovation going on, you talked about expanding some of it, to the consumer market, whereas you've traditionally been B2B. Like, you're bringing some innovation to the company as well, and thinking about, how do we diversify, first outside of tuna into different species, and then just delivery methods and maybe who your customers are?
Sure. I mean, our direct to consumer market, it was out of necessity with COVID, right? March, that mid-March hit, we still purchased the same amount of fish that we would any other week. And all of a sudden, 25% of the restaurants shut down. Next day, another 25%. And then we're like, oh man, I mean, we don't really know what's going on. And next thing you know, at the end of it, 90% of the restaurants shut down. So you still have the same purchase volume. And what are you going to do when half of it is fresh? So we started doing making boxes, fish boxes, and saying, okay, this box is $50, this box is $100, cash and carry essentially. We'll drop it off, you pick it up, whatever. I mean, we lost a ton of money, but we realized that there is a market for it. And then, once COVID hit, we went from 75 people to 16 people in a matter of a week.
Wow.
Sales went down 90%. We went to skeleton crew, 16 people. And we're like, okay, what are we going to do? So we quickly put up work with my team. We got a website going in terms of e-commerce, took a bunch of pictures. I mean, it was rough in terms of like the look and feel of it, but it was just out of necessity. We just said, all right, let's just start selling stuff to the consumers because everything is closed. People want it. And a lot of people did pivot it to direct to consumer. But now it's kind of more like it's a good side income to have, but I don't want to spend the money or the time on it to grow the business. But I'm on the other spectrum where I see the business going in this direction of, if you live in a city, who wants to wheel around in a cart and go grocery shopping and wheel it back? And especially if you live in a building without elevators, you really want to huff, groceries up and down the stairs. And, when we could just deliver it to your door, or at least get it to your building, and you just have to come downstairs and grab it. Same thing with every other subscription box and everything. It's just opened up the market to, pre-pandemic, it didn't make sense for me to make $100 box. It's like, why would I want to do that? But then you realize that it actually works very smoothly with what we do. And a lot of the smaller custom restaurants don't want. Home consumers are grateful. They're very happy. They're excited to see it.
Right.
And obviously then to give the access to Japan, Toyosu, uni, all the stuff that you can't buy at a local grocery store or even a specialty store. The fact that it's pretty much, it came today and you receive it the same day. It's like, it's kind of unheard of. So
it's unheard of. Consumers love that. And they love the fresh. They like knowing where it's coming from. And you have that trust built in. You also set up like distribution centers so customers can come pick things up too. I saw on your website where you have some locations and certain days of the week, you're going to have that availability. Like, it seems like you're really thinking about, here's our core business, and you're not giving up on that. As a matter of fact, I know you want to expand that with your chefs and restaurants and those B2B customers, but also there's this other, extra lines of business that you could use. We home consumers are not chefs, and we're not Michelin star restaurants like you serve. So the quality of the fish, it could be lesser than what you're giving those certain restaurants, but we love it, right? So it probably helps you with evening all of that out when you get different qualities of fish in, I imagine.
I mean, we try to maintain the quality same as what Le Bernardin would get, right? One of our customers. That's kind of the selling point for our business. It's kind of like Michelin star quality seafood delivered to your door, and get the cuts that you wouldn't be able to get. A Japanese bluefin from Japan, the Otoro cut, or like uni from Hokkaido, or and like I said, tuna is very subjective, so it's not like because the fact that we probably deal with the most amount of tuna in our region. We have the ability to, pick and choose certain things and downgrade it. And, we have a lot of different portfolio of clients that want the best cuts to, maybe not so because they're going to cook it. But, we also make sure that our home consumers get the best quality stuff because, they're also paying top dollars for it. So I want to make sure that they're happy with what they're getting. And, like I said, it's about education of it because seafood tends to be a product or, item that is people are more scared of handling because there's just a lot of lack of knowledge and experience as opposed to chicken or steak, right? So when it comes to fish, like, oh my God, this is amazing. I ate at a sushi restaurant, but I have no idea what to do with it. Or I don't want to mess it up because it's so expensive. So, I think there's a lot of that that we had to, especially in the beginning where, there was no information and we didn't really have the right contents put in place or information. So it was a lot of just like dealing with individual questions about how do you thaw out this super frozen tuna, or can this stay in the freezer for how long? It's like, well, no, we keep it in minus 80 degrees super freezer. So please don't keep it longer than a couple of days. Just kind of little things like that where obviously when we had 16 people, it was like nobody could deal. We didn't have the structure or the manpower, the resources in place to be able to do all that. But now that we're, back now we have 80 people and we're working on figuring out that aspect of the business, which we're not really familiar with, making YouTube videos or really focusing on social media or or even doing a podcast like this. Before, it just would have been like, why would I do a podcast? Why would I, pay money to someone to run social, or why would I run ads on Google? It's just, now it's like, all right, it's the way we have to do in terms of building awareness and branding, because sure, from a chef and restaurant perspective, everyone knows who we are. But from a consumer perspective, they don't know who we are because we never really cared for it. So sure, we may supply some of the best restaurants in the world, and a lot of them, until people are aware of that, they're not going to know a lot of people just don't know our existence, because there was nothing out there before.
Well, we're so glad that you decided to be on Future Foodcast, because we're delighted to share you with our audience and our listeners. They love to know about good quality food and where to find it. So Yama Seafood is definitely expanding, and they can check out the website. But Nobu, before we go, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners? I mean, thank you for your generosity in kind of giving us a look into your company and how you operate and your culture, and just the challenges and the successes that you've had, actually. But is there anything else you'd like to share?
Like I said, direct to consumer market is something that I love for more people to be aware of. We do ship nationwide. We have different options of deliveries, pickup, and whatnot. So, and I'm always open to feedback from consumers. If you guys want to send us an email or give us a call to say, hey, I wish you guys had this. I wish you guys did this. I wish you guys shared this information. These are all valuable information for us that, when we do this day to day, we may not see it, but at the end user, it's like, hey, I wish I had this information. Hey, I wish I had this option. I wish you guys bought this. I brought this or offered these. These are things that, obviously for us, it's, we're only as good as the people that purchase from us, and you are the reason why we are here. So I'd love to get any insight and feedback on anything, no matter how small you think it is. We're always here. I mean, I'm responding to emails all the time. Yeah, I'm very excited in this business. I'm really excited to, provide this, empower customers, you guys, to be able to do these at home. You don't have to necessarily spend $500 at a restaurant to enjoy the same level of tuna or salmon or uni that you could buy at home in your own comfort of your own home with your family and friends for the fraction of the price. So, it's very exciting, and I'm sure there's a lot more that we could do and improve upon. But yes, that's where my excitement comes from.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you to our sponsor, Farm to Plate. They're creating tomorrow's food supply chain ecosystem today. You can check out more at farmtoplate.io. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.